This is Patriots Playbook.
The legend.
He's like, I got to get out of here before Rook says, oh, please, can you give me 15 minutes?
Oh, I always have 15 minutes for you. You know that.
Well, you better have 30.
Thinking if I have to deal with Mac versus Bailey again this week, I just don't know if I have the breath left.
Go ahead and tell us, you damn quarterback, because they both stink to high heaven, or whatever it was he said. I'm paraphrasing, right? Why would Rex even feel the need to do that? Because Rex has been waiting his whole life to beat the Patriots at something.
And haven't had a chance to see the gritty. What the hell is that? Haven't even seen it. Now, here's your host of Patriots Playbook, John Rook.
Where's Evan? I think, did he miss the bus with Fred? Oh, my goodness. Can you believe that? I guess one of the issues we have here, sometimes communication isn't the best of anything around here when you're, what are we, 2-9, 2-10, 2-12, 2-80? What are we? You may know?
Communication record or the team record?
Wow. Talk about paying attention to detail. We ain't doing that around here lately. Nope. We blow and everybody knows it. Okay, so welcome into the playbook. We make fun, and we have to because, frankly, probably be pulling out our hair if it, was anything different than that. So Evan is off traveling with Fred for the game tomorrow night, but we're holding down the fort here. So, coming up with the program, the one and only Big Head himself, Andy Jumbo Hart, he will join us at the bottom of the hour. Mike DeFabo, is that how he pronounces his name, or is it DeFabo? We probably should double-check on that, right, just to be safe. But I believe it's DeFabo. He covers the Steelers for The Athletic. He's going to join us at the top of the second hour. The Steelers happen to be going through a lot of similar issues, I think, as the Patriots are, and those of you that follow it probably closer than I do and closer than many of us do around here, are probably aware of that. They're in a little bit better spot than the Patriots are, certainly in wins and losses, but I understand there's some consternation in Steelers Nation with, Mike Tomlin and some of the issues that are going on around there concerning their quarterback who, they're going to get Mitch Trubisky apparently tomorrow night. So we'll talk to Mike about that coming up with him on the Steelers status. And then the one and only Russell Baxter will join us at the bottom of the second hour to go through, what week are we in? Week 14? See, it all runs together. You lose track of it, but it all runs together when you get to this time of year, and you don't have some juice in the game. You just don't. I mean, think about it. When we're all hepped up and, got to get this win, and then hopefully, get a little help on down the line, and then you move into first place, and then you have a chance to get home field advantage, and we're talking about that kind of thing at this time of year every year, except this one. And that's a little bothersome. I know I sound a lot like an ungrateful fan. I'm not ungrateful. How many times have we talked about that here on the show? Definitely not ungrateful. But at the same time, I'm telling you that we are used to a different standard. And that standard has not been met. It hasn't been met by anybody. We try to, soldier on as best as we can through, thick and thin. And I don't know, is this thick or thin? Which one is this? When you stink like that, on ice, is it thick or thin? I'm not really sure which way the adage is supposed to go. But we try to soldier on as best as we can. We do want to talk about the game. We do want to talk about football because I understand that, quite frankly, there are some people that are interested in that, whether you're wagering on it or you're just a fan or you support your team or you're waving pom-poms or you want Bill Hout or you want Mac back it doesn't really matter where you stand. You're still got general interest in the team. And so because of that, that's why we keep doing what we do every week. And, yeah, we will talk some football with these guys. But I think as we all realize, look, when you've gone 3 straight weeks and you've held your opponent to 10 points or less and you can't win a game, you have major problems. And I'm sure you've heard the numbers. You've heard everybody talk about it already. This is the first time in the modern Super Bowl era. So we're talking damn near 50 years, over 50 years, that a team has gone 3 straight weeks of limiting their opponents to 10 points or less and lost every game. That's remarkable. It's unfathomable when you consider, The Patriots, won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, and then they won 3 more in 5 years, and the only team, certainly in modern era, to do that. We can go back even further than the modern era for that one. And to have the same franchise capable of doing such a pratfall in 1 year is probably one of the stories that gets remembered over a length of time. And if the Patriots have any sort of, come back to this over the course of the next, I don't know, 10, 15 years, this will be referred to, as the veritable roller coaster. You've got a franchise who was started at the bottom, when the AFL was nothing but a fledgling league, and the Patriots were a mediocre team and a fledgling league, and somehow Billy Sullivan and the Patriots, largely due, I would think, to the Boston marketplace and being the only team really in the Northeast other than the Giants, somehow finagled a franchise. And you know the history. If you've been to the Hall of Fame here at Patriot Place, you understand what the history is. I think all of it had to do with the fact that it was Boston and the marketplace, and that's how they got a team, even though they might not have necessarily deserved it. They barely supported it. There was so much of a heavy influence of the Giants here in New England. I mean, if you're from New England, how many of you have, moms, dads, grandpas, grandmas, uncles, people older than you who grew up Giants fans? And you may even still be a Giants fan simply because that's the way your dad and your granddad grew up. I get that. I understand that completely. I have friends who grudgingly have become Patriots fans, but when they were kids, they were Giants fans because their parents and grandparents were Giants fans. So what I'm saying here is that this franchise started at the bottom. You can't really start any lower than where it started in the old AFL in the 60s. And again, like I said, it was largely a middling franchise. There were a couple of successful years in there in the 60s when they were playing at Fenway Park and Nickerson Field and, some of the other venues that they managed to, stumble into before, Schaefer Stadium was built. Schaefer/Sullivan/Foxborough Stadium before we have this iteration of Gillette Stadium, which is shocking to me. When was the first year here? 2002? So this is the 22nd season? Yeah, you count 2002 as number 1. This is year 22 for Gillette Stadium, which is mind-numbing. I'd be remiss, and I'm going to digress here because I love to digress, and you know this if you follow the show at all. We do kind of just let things pop into our heads here. And by the way, I would love for you to digress with me. Something pops in your head about this team, about anything that's going on, anything that I talk about, 855-PATS-500. We often enough don't open up the phones early in the show because Evan's in here and we're talking football, and we try to get to the business at hand because we always have a busy agenda. Not quite as busy today, and I don't mean to slam Evan because of that, but, Evan's got a flight to take to do his job. He's got to cover the team, for the website here, and so this gives us extra time. And I do have a couple of guests coming on later in the show because I like to have conversations. This isn't necessarily interviewing. It's a conversation with people who know football and know their particular area of expertise. And so we try to converse so that way you, hopefully, not only are somewhat entertained, but you become more informed. And then you create your own opinions, and that's how this rolls. But I'd love to talk to you. 855-PATS-500, web radio at patriots.com if you can't get to the phone and you're listening on your computer and you want to send a note. Email is still probably the best way to go. Web radio at patriots.com, or just send me a tweet. Slide me a DM if you need to. At JR Broadcaster on X. I have to admit that this weekend is a pretty special deal around here. Many of you are certainly aware that the Army-Navy game is here at Gillette this weekend. That has long been a bucket list item of mine in the sports world. You have a life bucket list and you have a sports bucket list, and I have two. I have 2 bucket lists. Like, for instance, I'm going to tell you that my life bucket list includes I want to take a cruise on the Nile River and see the pyramids and the Sphinx. That's what I want to do. That's on my bucket list. Okay? I'm not sure I want to get off the boat, but I want to see them. Oh, okay. Hey, look, there's the Sphinx. Hey, his nose is busted. Okay, bye. But that's on the bucket list. The sports bucket list includes the Army-Navy game. Now, I've been very fortunate. Many of you know I did Big East football for a number of years when there was a Big East football conference. I did Boston College football for a number of years as well on the radio. And so I've been very privileged to have called broadcasts at both Mikey Stadium, which is Army's home field in West Point, New York, and at Navy Marine Corps Memorial Stadium, which is Navy's home field in Annapolis. Go ahead, give it to me. Give it to me.
Hoorah!
Okay, see, I knew he'd want to, right? So I guess it's pretty safe to say you root for Navy in this thing, right?
I would root for Navy.
Yeah, I thought probably so. Okay, which is fine. That's fine. We understand that a lot of Patriot fans will probably sort of pull for Navy anyway because of Bill Belichick's long relationship with the Naval Academy, his dad, and things along those lines. Grew up in Annapolis for a while, and so I totally get that. I'm not trying to disparage Army. Army, I think, is favored in this game, actually, this year, believe it or not. And, of course, Navy had been dominating for years in this series over recent times, but I think Army may have an edge on it. Anyway, it'll add to the spice of the game. But this has been a sports bucket list item. Been to both of those venues, but had never been to, normally in Philadelphia. They played it at Old Veterans Stadium when it was still around. And, of course, now it's at the Link. 124 years is the number of games that Army and Navy will have played each other this year, counting this weekend. And this is just the third time ever in this 124-year history that it has been played away from the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States. First time ever in New England, which is a pretty cool thing. I think if you probably heard, there's even a song, right, called Pomp and Circumstance. It's what you play when you go to graduation. Da, 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 da. Okay, well, I'm not going to sing anymore. But that's pomp and circumstance. This game has more pomp and more circumstance in it than you will ever see, potentially, in your lifetime. But until you actually experience the cadets and the midshipmen marching into the stadium with pomp and circumstance. I don't think they actually play the song, but they just, man, it's moving. If you're not moved, if you're not emotionally sort of, fixated on that moment, then I would tell you you're 6 feet underground.
Or a Marine.
Or a Marine. Wait, I thought you guys are supposed to be at attention all the time. Right?
Not paying attention.
Oh, you're at attention.
To the Army or the Navy.
Okay, gotcha. You're at attention, but you're not paying attention. There's a big difference. I got it. That's good to know little secrets. Good to know little military secrets. I like that. That's why we have our own Marine in the house right here. I love it. I believe that, no matter what you think about the current status of affairs in the United States of America, no matter what you think about Americans, if you're living abroad or you're outside the country, you're another spot in this world, other than, where we are right here, I hope that you're safe and you're happy where you are. But no matter what negativity you hear out there, you can't help but possibly feel better about what we do and the privileges and the rights that we have, and that these young men are going to go out there and defend us with their very lives, at the drop of a hat. I don't know how you can't feel good about that. And then we got a football game to celebrate on top of that. This is about as American as the old adage goes, baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. It just really is. Wasn't that the old song, by the way? Baseball, hot dogs, apple pie, and Chevrolet. Yeah, that was the jingle, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the Paw Sox all the time.
Yes, the Pawtucket Red Sox used to do that. God bless them. Did you know that franchise sold this week? The Woo
Sox already sold?
The Woo Sox sold this week. I didn't know this either until just yesterday. The Worcester Red Sox, they moved from Pawtucket to Worcester. This is the AAA affiliate for Boston, right? And, of course, a lot of controversy because they were supposed to stay in Rhode Island, build them a stadium, and then the politicians in the state basically, effed it up. Okay, and they took the team of the franchise to Worcester, which is actually the second largest single city in New England behind Boston. It's actually a little bit bigger population-wise than Providence. In Portland, Maine as well. I guess you got to throw them in there too. But they sold it. They sold it to a baseball holdings company. It's called Diamond Holding Company. And they own several minor league teams around the country that have major league affiliations, of which, of course, the Woo Sox would be one, formerly the Paw Sox. But I guess all the same people are staying, in place. It's just that, they don't have as much, skin in the game left. They've gotten to, they're reaping some of the benefits of the rewards is what they're doing when they sell this, and so now there's a company that owns this, a holding company that owns this baseball franchise. Yeah, you got to see Marine. We should really have the camera.
I'm upset they moved it out of Kentucky.
We should have the camera on Marine because he's sitting here and he's doing this and he's shaking his head and he's just like, you can tell he's got steam coming out of his ears. He's grumbling.
Got Tidewater Soccer Stadium coming. Don't worry.
Wow. Bitter much?
The Paw Sox were a big part of my childhood.
I know. A big part of my kids' childhood, because my boys are your age. They're right around your age. One's a little older, one's a little younger than you, so you're right in the middle of them. But, we grew up there. I spent 9 years as a broadcaster for that franchise. And,
Ben Mondor was great.
Yeah. Well, Ben, largely former owner of the Pawtucket Red Sox, Ben is the reason I stayed in New England. You didn't know that? You did not know. See, Marine didn't even know that. Ben is as big a reason as any single individual that I stayed in New England. When I moved here in 1988, I went to work for what was then the ABC affiliate in Providence, and I was there for 3 years. They decided not to renew my contract, even though we had just won an Emmy Award for Best Newscast, because they thought that at age 31, I was making too much money, and I was making just under $60,000 a year. This is in 1991. I don't mind telling you. All things are relative now, so it's fine. But I was too old and I made too much money. And they found somebody who would work for half my salary, who was younger than me, and I was 31. So they let me go. That's the true story. True story, right? And so I'm at a crossroads of my career. I thought, I was on the upward swing. I was getting ready to, start, thinking about, moving up into a bigger market. Boston was likely. I ended up in Boston anyway because a lot of, I spent 11 years in TV in Boston at Channel 56 before they shut down that newsroom. And then Channel 7 bought them out, and that's how my TV career ended. But I ended up going to Boston TV already anyway and doing a lot of stuff in Boston. I worked at EEI for almost 30 years. And, between the radio station and then the website and then doing Boston College football and all the other stuff that I did for them. Mondor, Ben, I can't call him, I have to call him Mr. Mondor, I'll be honest with you, because he was like a grandfather. He came to me with an idea. This is in 1991, 2, right around probably about this time, about 31 or 32 years ago, okay? 32 years ago, I guess. And he said, how would you feel about coming to work for us? And I'm like, what would you want me to do, Ben? He's like, I want you to be on the radio. And so they, at the time, the Pawtucket Red Sox, now the Worcester Red Sox, but the Pawtucket Red Sox had a solo broadcaster. The guy at the time that was doing the game solo was a guy by the name of Jack LaFave. Immediately prior to Jack getting the job was a guy by the name of Gary Cohen. Some of you who follow Major League Baseball and are fans in the Northeast know Gary Cohen because he's the voice of the Mets on SNY. Okay? And I've known Gary forever. Gary was also my predecessor as the voice of the Friars, the Providence Friars in the Big East. Yep, did him for 1 year before then he left to go take the job in New York to work in the radio booth. And then he moved over after about 10 years to do TV, and he's been on SNY ever since. But he said, yeah, we've been thinking about putting on, a second guy so that way they can have more conversation. He said, we think that that's something that probably a lot of teams are going to do. Sure enough, Ben, having the foresight that he had, it was great foresight because that became a trend now. And, of course, now just about every team out there at the major league level, certainly, and even at the AAA level, many teams have two broadcasters now. So I was the very first number 2 broadcaster, in Pawtucket Red Sox history. They hired me to do home games, and I traveled to a few select games because I was a single dad at the time. And frankly, I didn't want to take all those bus rides because I would have had to, leave my kids with my ex-wife. Okay. What is there a truth serum in here? What am I doing? You know.
I'm kidding though, because what Pete Shepard, Will Fleming.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
The list goes on.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's a great track record of announcers that have gone through Pawtucket. I mean, you can, obviously Will Fleming, currently with the Red Sox, he went to Pawtucket. His brother Dave Fleming, who's a voice of the San Francisco Giants. Aaron Goldsmith, who's up in Seattle doing radio. Tim Neverett, who is one of the radio voices of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Tim has become a good friend over years. Tim and I worked together years ago, at the old Sports Final radio network in Cambridge. Tim, he was a Pawtucket Red Sox guy. Bob Socci, hello. Bob Socci did the Pawtucket Red Sox. Okay, he also did the Tidewater Tides. So he had experience with two teams in the AAA International League as it was known at the time. But Bob Socci did the Paw Sox. So yeah, the Paw Sox have a huge history of announcers. And he asked me, would I be interested in that way? You could do baseball in the summertime, and then you could, still do the Friars. He could still do the Friars in the wintertime. He said Gary Cohen did that for years here, and he was very successful. Rather than, go out and hunting for a baseball job or a football job or a TV job or whatever it was at the time, it was the easiest route to take, because that way I could stay, my kids could stay put. I could actually, try to put some roots down, even though I always kept looking. But it just, and then the job grew and the position grew and the responsibility grew. And then I turned the radio job 2 years from Pawtucket into a job for 7 years with Nesson. And so I was a contractor for Nesson, but I did the television for Nesson, and I did their sports desk and did a lot of other things. And, of course, Tom Larson, who was on Nesson and TV 38 for years doing Red Sox and Bruins pregame, just passed away a little over a week ago. And Tom was 84, but that's where we first met before Nesson became a basic tier channel when it was strictly subscriptions only, so the audience was smaller. But that's when Tom Larson ruled the roost, and and I was taking his crumbs, at that time. God bless Tom. But that's kind of how it all started, and that's what got me stuck around. And then that's the whole story about how I got started with the Patriots, because it was one night that I was doing when I was in between jobs, because I had what was known at the time as a no-compete clause in my contract in television, which meant that once the TV station let me go, I could not go to work for another station in the same market for 6 months, which is now illegal. You can't do that anymore. That's been outlawed. There have been laws written against no-compete clauses now, because it's, it restricts you. It's, right to work, right? But at the time, this is back in the early 90s, there were no-compete clauses, and so I was waiting for my 6-month no-compete clause to end, and as soon as it ended, I went right to work for the NBC station in Providence, and then from there, I went to work at Channel 56 in Boston. But while I was waiting for it to expire, radio station in Providence, WPRO, which carries our games now, they were doing a sports talk show out on remote one night. Chuck Wilson, was the great Chuck Wilson, who, helped found ESPN Radio back in the early 90s. He was doing a show, and so they asked me to come out and sort of host the crowd part of it, during the commercial breaks, interact with the people, maybe do trivia questions and just chat everybody up, maybe do some live interviews, whatever. And so I said, sure, hey, for a couple of bucks, I'll do anything, right? What else has changed? 30 years later, we're still doing it here, right? And there happened to be 3 Patriots marketing executives in the audience that night. This was at what was the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Providence, the restaurant that they have there. Is it still McCormick and Schmick? What's down there now? Do you know?
God, I do. I was just there last 2 weeks ago for a wedding.
Yeah, we drive by there damn near twice a week anyway when we do basketball games. Anyway. So these marketing executives came up and they said, wow, we really like the way you interact with people. I don't even know if I've told this story on the show before, but this is how I got the Patriots, gig. This is how it happened. And I said, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. And they go, you really know how to command an audience. And I'm like, well, thank you. I appreciate that. It was very nice of you. And they said, we're going to make a change on our public address, at Foxborough Stadium for next year. The guy who preceded me as the stadium voice of the Patriots is a gentleman by the name of George Yusevich. And, and I didn't know. I knew his voice, but I never had met George personally. But he retired, and I think he was well into his 70s when he retired, but he handled all the games at Schaefer/Sullivan/Foxborough. I even think he did some of the games when it was at Nickerson and Fenway Park. But he was largely the Patriots PA guy, and he was retiring. And so they said, we need a new, fresh voice. We need somebody that can kind of command the audience and yada, yada. He said, would you be interested in trying out? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll try out. And so they were holding basically, they told me it was a contest where there were going to be like 3 or 4 media personalities from around the area who they thought could engage the audience and command the audience. And they said, do you have any PA experience? And I said, well, actually, I do. I spent a year as a public address announcer in the NBA. After I got fired from that job. But I got fired from that job because they were redesigning their broadcast and going from a split feed to a simulcast. And so they only had a job for one play-by-play announcer. So my being the youngest guy and the last guy hired by the Spurs, I was the first guy to go on the totem pole. And they said, well, we really like you, and we're making a change in our public address, so would you slide over and do the PA for a season? And then we'll see how things play out. Sure, I'll do it. And so that's how I got my PA experience. I did a year in the NBA back in like 1985. I think it was like 85. So I said, yeah, I actually have, experience. I did a year in the NBA, and they said, that's great. That's going to give you a leg up. So we each did a quarter of a preseason game. I'll never forget it. It was the Kansas City Chiefs. We were playing Kansas City in a preseason game. And that was it. And then I got a call the day after the game, and they said, you're it. Tag, you're it. And I've been doing it ever since. This is year 32 for me, and that's how it worked. We didn't start the whole first down thing until, probably mid to late 90s. Gary Grudecki, who is our broadcast manager here, basically running the same job that Marine is doing now, and that, Kevin Collins did before him, and Jason Dvorkin did before him. Gary Grudecki was the guy, and we wanted to work something together out to where we could really engage the audience, and largely that's what we came up with, where I would actually say first down, but it got to be where everybody picked up on it so quickly, I would just lay out, and the crowd took with the first down, and that's the way it happened. And we've been doing it ever since. And, of course, now, should have patented the son of a gun, right? Should have patented it. Should have put a patent pending on that thing, because now I wouldn't be talking to you, and I'd have an island in the Caribbean somewhere.
Been like ready to rumble.
Yeah, totally. And speaking of rumble, that's what what's his name did with Let's Get Ready to Rumble. Remember, right?
That's what I was saying.
Yeah, same thing. He put a patent on that sucker, and every time somebody uses that, he gets a royalty. And now every team in the NFL, every team in the NBA. Hell, I've even heard some baseball announcers, doing things with the fans like that. I'm like, what the hell? This is why I'm still, ham and egging it after 40 years, right? That's the story, and I'm sticking to it. I don't know. I can't recall, honestly, in 22 years of doing the show, I can't recall if we've ever told that story. I'm not sure how many people actually know that, but there you go. So, see, we got off tangent here. We got off the beaten path. We completely and totally, eschewed football today just because I've got all these things, running around in this, rackety brain of myself, all thanks to the Army-Navy game coming up this weekend. That's what started the conversation. And, yeah, I'm going to be here for the Army-Navy game, in case anybody wants to know. I mean, this is a Navy home game, technically. It's their home game this year. Hoorah. That's right. And Scott Strassmeyer is the guy who is the longtime sports information director at the Naval Academy, and I've known Scott since my days of doing Big East and Boston College football. And so I sent him a note as soon as we, knew that the game was official. I said, hey, Scott, I'm here. I'm still here after all these years. And he said, there's going to be so much hype around that game, being out in, the Mid-Atlantic and being in New England for the first time. He said, I imagine our guy, their Navy Marine Corps, stadium guy, will want to travel. But he said, if he doesn't, we'll contact you. I had never heard back from Navy until I got, an email about a week ago saying, hey, are you still available to do the game? So I'm like, well, is the Pope Catholic? So, yeah. So it'll be an honor and a privilege to be there to do that. Very, very cool. Sarge will be with me. He's going to spot with me in the booth, so which is also pretty cool, which is kind of neat. So it's all happened extraordinarily quickly. I got the email. When did I get the email? As soon as I came in here today, right? And I said, hey.
Opening the door.
Yeah, I opened the door, and there's my email. And I'm like, whoa, what's this? Unbelievable. All right, so promised a little football today, and a little maybe Army-Navy perspective as well. Why not? Because that's the big game that's being played here this week. The one and only at Jumbo Hart, Andy Hart, WEEI.com, formerly Patriots.com, joins us here on the program. Andy, how you doing, bud?
That's another John Rook origin story.
So you know you've been around a while when you tell origin stories. Okay, you got me. I like it, but it's the truth, and I'm sticking to it. So,
Yep.
One way or the other. How the heck are you, man?
I'm great. How are you? Other than the football season, everything's good.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this morning, and I'm like, wow. What the hell do we talk about? I mean, I'm not saying that to be snide. I'm not saying that to even in a humorous way. I'm being serious.
Right.
What do we talk about that hasn't been beaten to death? We know where the issues lie. We certainly have had that unfortunately emblazoned, branded into our brains over the last 3 weeks, especially. And you've got another 5 weeks still to play in the season. So I think we're in football purgatory. What do you think?
A little bit. I mean, certainly it's a weird time. I know we fall into the trap on our station and on our podcast of big picture and this guy's fired, this guy's coming in, who you're drafting. And it's like, well, there's time for that in January. We're still a third of a football season left to go. And the thing I keep coming back to is, some of these guys are going to be around. And I think that's what you are trying to figure out. Who do you want long term?
Yes.
Do you want Mike Onwenu? Are you willing to sign him? Now, after last week and the way he dealt with Khalil Mack, maybe no. Do you want Kyle Duggar? Do you want Josh Uche? Ramondre Stevenson, he's got one more year. Do you want him? You're trying to figure out, because this team has remarkably few players that I think you can say, that guy is part of the future. That guy is part of on the field, off the field culture. And, maybe the way they handle some of it, this adversity and some of this losing, maybe that shows you. I thought there was an interesting comment from Bill Belichick this week he was talking about Marte Mapu, but he was saying how, we have two of safeties that barely leave the field. We have really good safeties. They're two of the better safeties in football. Mm-hmm. Are you keeping those guys? You want to keep Kyle Duggar? So I think whether it's for Bill or not, you're showing your best effort to impress the next guy, impress the next team, or just kind of, be a professional and prove that you deserve to be a professional next year.
Right. And here's the kicker to all of this, Andy. What if the coaching staff is different next year? Yep. One guy's trash is another guy's treasure and vice versa. So Absolutely. We may be looking at these guys like, oh, is this guy worth keeping? But, somebody comes in, may say, nah, don't like him. So what are we really doing here except spinning our wheels? And I feel like we're spinning our wheels for the next 5 weeks until we get some kind of conclusion that Bill Belichick will still be running the show.
Right. And I don't know about you. I'm to the point where I think that feels unlikely. And I know that's a strange thing to say. You just think of Bill Belichick, Patriots. He's been here forever. The sort of the Jonathan Kraft, he's earned the right to decide the way it ends and things of that nature. But things have gone so far south in the last, certainly this season, the last month and a half, but, the last couple years. And, he's not getting any younger. And I just have to think not just the on-field losing. We know that that's been terrible. They can't score points, Mac, all of that. We're all aware of that. But the viewpoint of Robert and Jonathan Kraft, where they look at a stadium that's half empty. They look at ticket sales before the game where get-in prices suddenly, and I'm not even going to go to the rainy day right before kickoff, but a couple days before kickoff, you could get into Gillette Stadium for $50. Mm-hmm. And, they are businessmen and fans. Yep. And both sides of that coin. As a fan, they're not entertained. They're not seeing winning. They're not competing. And as a businessman, the business is going south. So that has to push them, in a certain direction, and it's not necessarily one that I think is easy for some people to accept, but, owners own, and owners have to make hard decisions sometimes.
Right. Well, to that end, in case anybody was wondering, the announced attendance for last Sunday's game with the Chargers was only 48,000. We haven't had a crowd that low here in 30 years.
Yep. And I know the weather played a part, but it was, if this is a better, more competitive football team, there's a lot more than 48,000 people there. I can tell you my son was there, and he did the old, seat upgrade.
Yeah, of course. Hey, I had college kids. They're pretty smart. Some of my students in class on Monday, because I said, I saw you. They sat literally 3 rows in front of me on the 50-yard line. They bought cheap seats for whatever they were going for, like $15, I think they said, and then they looked to see which tickets were being resold. Okay, on the good seats. And hadn't been sold, and they went down to those seats and sat there on the 50-freaking-yard line the entire game. Yep. I gave them an A for the day, that's for sure.
Now, you should give them an A because really they got good seats, but they didn't get to see much that was entertaining.
No, they did. They did have to weather the storm, so to speak. Right? Yeah, no question about that.
But you bring up something interesting about the coaching staff changing, and something that I kind of actually came to me this morning when I was recording a podcast with Fitzy, Six Rings, and the Mac Jones question, Mac is under contract. Mac is under, a pretty team-friendly contract, $5 million or whatever it is. And the idea, could you bring him back? I mean, it feels like everybody's moved on from him, but as you say, if there's new coaches here, say there's a new GM and a new head coach, maybe you don't need to change the scenery for Mac. Maybe the scenery changes around him, so to speak. And even though it feels like he's done here, just the way everything's played out over the last 2 years, that's even something I wonder about. In a weird world, you bring in a different offensive mind, and as you said, that guy looks at Mac and says, I can make it work with him. He won't be my only quarterback. I'll bring in a veteran or I'll draft a guy, but I want him to compete. So I just – there's so much that's up in the air with 5 games to go that this is a weird spot. I don't know whether you call it spinning your wheels or we're so unfamiliar to this world that it's tough for us to really rationalize and live through.
It's both. But, I mean, to me, just because of the financials of Mac Jones's contract, when people say, he's done here, he'll never play another game here, I'm like, wait a minute. You don't know that. Because money-wise, it makes sense, and I'm talking about CENTS. It makes sense for him to stick around. They don't need to cut him loose because he's manageable. And, so you go out and you get a veteran replacement or maybe you draft somebody, but he could certainly be that bridge guy, an affordable bridge guy, and he would have incentive because he's got to play for another contract probably somewhere else. So, I'm saying, look, that's why this whole, all right, well, do we want to keep this guy? I want them to play this guy. Look, that's really hard to do right now. I think they're going to play everybody, and under the assumption that, the coaching staff is going to be back when we know in reality that isn't going to happen. I'd be stunned if the entire coaching back came back intact. I can't imagine that there won't be, if Bill is back, that there won't be multiple changes underneath him. And that's not only in coaching, that's also in the scouting staff as well, which, we've heard, lots of things about, of late. So there's going to be major changes made. But when it comes to the financials, and this is something that the Patriots have always been steadfast with, and Andy, you know this as well as anybody because you've been on the inside here, they aren't going to spend money foolishly. And so if they can control a contract, they're going to control it as long as they can. Why the hell else do you hold on to Jimmy Garoppolo as long as you do and basically get pennies on a dollar for him?
Right. Follow the money. I mean, it's not just the Patriots. In all walks of life, oftentimes you follow the money and pay attention to the money. And what makes financial sense often is the way things play out. And, as the great Fred Kirsch likes to say, conditions on the ground change. We look at Mac in a certain way right now.
Yeah.
The quarterback situation in a certain way right now, but you change a coach, you change a GM, you change a whatever, and you sort of look at it from a different vantage point or angle, and it's not that hard to envision him competing. Maybe he competes with a rookie, and then maybe the rookie beats him out, and he's like Cam, and he's cut at the end of training camp.
That could happen.
Because,
Go ahead.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, that's why you can't say, he's done here. He'll never play again here. You can't say that. We can't deal in absolutes, not with a team that is in, flux with a capital F right here in New England. I mean, that's what we have here. And we don't know that because we've never experienced this. So I think we have to sort of open up ourselves to all opportunities and all things here because I think anything goes. Nobody wants to see, a potential 2-15 team, repeat itself again, especially when you've taken a big, mother may I step backwards this year after what you did a year ago. And the ownership came out and said, we expect to be back in the playoffs. And not only did you not make the playoffs, you didn't even get close. You didn't sniff it. So, and you've set records for anti-offense. So I'm like, wow, I don't know how anybody can deal in the absolute. And I think it's because, and we hear so much what I would call absolutism, but we hear so much because we all think we know, because we're so used to seeing good football, we think we know what constitutes good football. And I would tell you that, as Fred said, situations to the ground change.
Right.
And I think that's a perfect phrase for what has happened to the New England Patriots this year. Situations have changed. And how you adapt with that change is what really is going to define you as a team and as a franchise. And this, of course, is the large conundrum now that the Kraft family is entertaining, because they've got to decide what the first thing to change is. Because as you already pointed out, these guys are businessmen. They're not going to stand for 20,000 no-shows, every week, for the remainder of the season. That's got to stop. Otherwise, they're going to look at some of the value of that franchise, which is north of $7 billion now, what it's worth. They're going to start seeing some of that erode. And what businessman in the right mind wants to see that erode? No one.
Right.
So here we go. That's why I just feel like we're stuck and we can't move. We're kind of in quicksand here. We're trying to get out of this hole, and there's no way out of it until some amount of time passes. And I don't know how much time really needs to pass here. I think at the very least we need another 5 weeks to pass here. And then maybe we can start to see some movement toward, if not, resurrection, how about sanity?
Well, certainly last year I think we got a taste of it when Robert and Jonathan sent out the season ticket member email right after the season, and then sent out that press release in regards to interviewing offensive coordinators,
right,
working on an extension with Gerard Mayo. The last couple off seasons, the collaborative effort in the personnel department, and then those changes I just talked about last year, I think they've tiptoed toward taking sort of full control of their team. And remember, last spring, Robert Kraft said, Bill Belichick runs my football team. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was an intentional phrasing of, it's felt like Bill makes all the football decisions for 2 decades, because he did, because he was good at it, because it was successful more often than not. But now I think we've taken the road toward Robert saying, this is my football team, and at some point I need to make the best decisions for the best interests of my football team, my family, my future, Jonathan Kraft, Harry Kraft, and the Kraft family, and the legacy that will be living long after Robert and long after Bill and long after you and I and everybody else. This is a family business and a franchise that's going to be around for a long time in Foxborough and with the Krafts. So these are big picture answers that he's going to have to, and I think you got to work sooner rather than later. Like they call it Black Monday for a reason, and he's Bill Belichick, and you certainly don't expect a press release on a Monday morning that Bill Belichick has been removed from the Patriots, but you can't drag your feet, right? I mean, especially when you're picking in the top few picks in the draft, and you need to get, if you're going to make a move, a GM in place, a coach in place, a system in place, and then start to figure out, are you in the Drake May market? Are you in the Marvin Harrison market? Because the offseason comes at you fast when you're making decisions that have ramifications for 3, 5, 10 years down the road.
Mm-hmm. Andy, I wonder, you bring up a kind of interesting thought here when we refer to Mr. Kraft, and I'm talking about Robert in particular, because he is getting up there in age, and you have to wonder how much a season like this, or the last 2 or 3 seasons, take a toll on him physically, if not mentally, and whether or not he's kind of like Bill. He wants to see this thing through as best as he can, but should he? I don't know. I mean, Jonathan seems content to, be right there by his father's side the entire time. But I think we all know that once Mr. Kraft decides to move on, then, Jonathan is the heir apparent. And I'm just wondering what your thought might be on a plan of succession in that realm, and whether or not we might not be closer to that than we are to a coaching change.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been surprised how many people on Six Rings post-game shows we do after these tough losses, they want a clean house. And when they say clean house, fans, they mean they
all
want
of it.
Jonathan taking full control. They want Robert to step aside. I don't necessarily see that as a necessity. I still think Robert is very capable of having a large role in this. I know he's in his early 80s, but this is a world where there's a lot of really rich, powerful men that are in their 80s, whether
Correct.
it's politics, business, the NFL. And you're right, he has the benefit of Jonathan as his right-hand man, who has been very active for, decades now, basically.
Right.
He's been his right-hand man.
Yeah.
And I think Robert has lived the life, just observing it from afar, lived the life he's wanted to live. Like, I think he goes to sporting events in Vegas and L.A. when he wants to and leaves Jonathan to deal with day-to-day operations and NFL meetings and those things. But I also think, and I look at it historically, well, he's hired two coaches in his career. He hired Bill Belichick and he hired Pete Carroll. They're both going to end up in Canton. They're both Hall of Fame coaches. So I think I want him involved on a day-to-day operational level, at least until the new regime is established, because, I think his personality, and you and I both know this, is different than Jonathan's, and I think the blending of their two strengths and weaknesses and personalities at this key time, I think that is still valuable. But there's a lot of fans that think Robert is a part of the problem and want to move on from him. I don't necessarily think that is accurate or really intelligent.
I think I'd have to share that sentiment, and I think you bring out a good point. The two coaches that he has actually hired are both going to end up being in the Hall of Fame. Right. And obviously, the ironic thing is that all of this, the coach that was in place when he got here is also in the Hall of Fame. So, so I'm just, and we can't get him into the Patriot Hall of Fame because, there doesn't seem to be the appetite for it. So, he knows, and I think he knows how to hire good people. Otherwise, he wouldn't be, a billionaire like, he is. And, I would totally agree with that. I think he should have a hand in it, but I wonder how much this beats down on him. And if he hasn't said, you know what, I think I'm ready to kind of turn it over. And I wonder if that might not be a hidden part to all of this. And I think it's a fair argument to ask just because of the upheaval that they're going through on the football side of things.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where you never know, does it motivate you and just say, I'm old, I don't need this crap anymore, I want to walk away and enjoy my life, or does it motivate you to take one last swing and I want to have one last impact on this franchise before I kind of go off into the sunset and do my retirement thing? And that's probably different for each individual. And it's weird because you have somebody like Jerry Jones who's been trying to get another bite at that apple for 3 decades now in Dallas. And we are feeling like, Robert's gotten kind of far away from the Super Bowl. It's 5 years. Like, it was 5 years ago, he was still hoisting a trophy above his head, and it hasn't been that long. But for him, and the way the bottom has fallen out here over the last year,
that's a long time.
It has to feel like that was a lifetime ago when the Patriots and the Patriot way were the measuring stick in the NFL. And now, you're seen as sort of an organization filled with ineptitude and losing on the field, and the coaching changes over the last year and that not working, and the failure to find a quarterback. So that's an interesting question, and I don't know how that would motivate Robert necessarily. My guess is for one last bite at the apple. My guess is that he wants to prove he can make a few decisions here near the end of his tenure that are the right ones to kind of push Jonathan into the future. And
I also feel like Bill feels the same way.
Yes, I agree. I'm just not sure if it's true. Some of the decisions that Bill has made the last couple of years make you wonder, has he lost his fastball, or whatever cliche you want to lose? The game passed him by. I said to somebody today, if you could bring back Bill Belichick to just run my defense, I'm not even sure I want him coaching offense or picking personnel, but if you told me I could keep Bill Belichick at 71 to run my defense, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I don't think that's really an option. It's probably more of an all-or-nothing scenario, and that's what makes it tough. Yeah, of course. Andy, I really appreciate the time today. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you one question about tomorrow night's game, because I kind of feel like I should. But really, what's at stake here? What's our reason for watching? Is our reason for watching to see if the Patriots can actually score a touchdown? Yeah, I look at it two ways. I want them to score a touchdown. I want them to be entertaining and competitive, and then I want them to lose in the end so they can have the number 2 overall pick or maybe the number 1 overall pick if things. The Steelers helped them out last Sunday by losing to the Cardinals to slide up a spot. Steelers can help them out again by fighting a good fight, put a little entertaining football on the field, and then pulling it out on the end. It's so strange for, I think, to look back at the Steelers-Patriots rivalry and Cowher and Tomlin versus Belichick and the Super Bowls and the AFC championships that were on the line, and now this is a borderline unwatchable backup quarterbacks. And I keep saying that the guy I feel almost the worst for is Al Michaels.
I just was thinking that this morning. I'm like, Al's got to be going, what the hell have I got myself into?
Yeah. This game is literally beneath him.
It's beneath him,
the
yes.
greatest play-by-play guy of the last 50 years.
Yes,
and
you're right.
He's doing Mitchell Trubisky and Bailey Zappi, and that's one of the things I'm actually looking forward to listening to him, because Al doesn't hold back. He's going to tell you what he thinks.
Right.
And I think there's probably going to be some interesting snarky comments from Al Michaels during the game that might provide some entertainment value. But, on the field, it's really about, can they score a touchdown? Can they be entertaining in any way? Can Bailey Zappi add a little bit of a spark? And then I think everybody has pretty much accepted the best thing for the future would probably be the number 2 pick. Although I keep bringing up that the counterexample to that is the football karma that played out in Houston, where Lovie Smith won a game that everybody was mad at him for. Mm-hmm. They didn't get the number 1 pick, but they end up with C.J. Stroud, who looks like the best quarterback in the draft, and their franchise is taking off because of it. So sometimes I wonder if football karma is a real thing, and maybe you do win by winning a game late that even though on paper looks like it hurts you.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point overall. Very good point. Andy, thank you for the chit-chat today. It's always good to visit with you, my friend, and keep up the good work. We'll be reading and we'll be listening.
My pleasure, John. Enjoy that Army-Navy game this week. So who are you rooting for? Do you have a rooting interest?
Honestly, my son was in the Navy. My oldest son was in the Navy, and Marine Matt, is a member of the Marine Corps. So I guess I would side toward Navy if I had to. But I'm going to play the neutral party here, and and if Army wins, then God love them, basically. But that's probably about where I stand. How's that for politically, correct?
And you're right. I mean, I know for Bill Belichick's purposes, he has a rooting interest on one side, the Naval Academy side, but I think most of us are just rooting for everybody involved because it's a pretty cool event and a pretty cool commitment.
It's a way cool event. Like I told, like I said at the top of the show today, this is a sports bucket list item for me to go to the Army-Navy game. And the fact that it's actually going to come to my place of work and my venue and in my neck of the woods and have a chance to see something like that. I mean, I don't have to travel to it. It's traveling to me. That's so rare. How could you not take advantage of that?
Exactly. Well, enjoy the experience.
Thanks, buddy. All right. Talk to you soon. You got it. Andy Hart of the Six Rings podcast, and, of course, formerly Patriots.com, Patriots Unfiltered, Patriots Football Weekly, yada, yada, yada. Really good conversation there on Mr. Kraft, on Robert, because that's sort of been one of the hidden things that I've been thinking about of late, just kind of wondering, and I wanted to get somebody's opinion who's known him and known the organization for a while. So, the timing of getting Andy on the program today was superb in that regard, just because these are all things that I think are going to be worthwhile to investigate, talk about, and maybe even make decisions about over the course of the next, minimum of 5 weeks anyway, until the season is over. But I would say largely the next 5 weeks to 2 months. I mean, look at the calendar. We're here in December. I would say by the end of January, probably right around Super Bowl time, we should have a pretty good idea, unless, of course, for some reason they've decided to make a change of coach, and one of those coaches is somehow still involved, in the season. That would be the only way that the Patriots aren't setting a course and moving forward. I would tell you by the Super Bowl we'll know. And if we don't know, well, that's an answer in itself. Any thoughts about that? 855-PATS-500, web radio at patriots.com, at JR Broadcaster on X.com. Mike DeFabo or DeFabo? Did we decide that yet? It is DeFabo. Thank you. Okay. So it's Mike DeFabo from The Athletic in Pittsburgh. He's going to join us here shortly, and then it will be Russell Baxter at the bottom of the hour. I got a couple of emails here that I do want to share. This one comes from Ray, who says, thoughts for the Patriots. The Patriots fire Belichick, make Mayo the new head coach, Draft QB Daniels from LSU. Hopefully we'll lose our remaining games. We will. And the Panthers lose 2. So here you go. I get a little loopy. We bring TB12 back for 1 year to mentor our new quarterback. Our next pick and via trade get a game changer at wide receiver. We might have to give up one of our better defensive players in a trade. Also get a field goal kicker. Easy peasy. Ray, I like when you have idle time because your mind says crazy things. Yeah, well, look, again, all bets are off on personnel, whether or not they're worth keeping around or whether they get cut if the coaching staff changes, okay? And that's one of the things we just discussed with Andy. I mean, look, if it's the same staff, if Bill's still running the show, do you want to keep, Kyle Duggar? Do you want to? Yes, you want to keep some of these players. You definitely do. But I would tell you that there's still a market for Mac Jones, no matter how down on him you may be. There's still a market for him, okay? And there may still be a place for him here in New England. Crazy as it sounds, I truly believe that right now. It has nothing to do with whether he's any good or not. It has everything to do with being able to afford the contract. We all know that's what NFL teams are built upon and predicated on these days. So you need to be prepared for that eventuality. I mean, in a perfect world, some of the stuff that you talk about, Ray, okay, fine, but again, it takes 2 teams to trade. It takes 2 teams to make a deal, and what you think would be plausible may not be. You may not be in your right bleeping mind to the other team. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Andrew, hey, JR, first time, long time. First, thanks for everything you do. My question today is about the rebuild. This is Andrew in Portland, Maine. Thank you, Andrew. I had an argument with a friend about the value of weapons versus offensive line help in the second round, assuming we go QB in the first. Which area of the Patriots roster do you think should be addressed in the second? Okay, we're making the assumption that you're going to take a quarterback with the number 2 or 3 or 4, whatever it would end up being, overall pick in the first round, right? So if we're going to make that assumption, we'll set that aside. We'll set it aside. I would tell you in the second round, I got to go offensive line. I have to. I mean, I just don't know how you can see anything else other than, part of the reason Mac has been damaged goods is because he's got a case of putter's yips. And I don't know if he doesn't have that innate sixth sense that a lot of great pocket quarterbacks have, because he just doesn't seem to be able to slide up into the pocket. And maybe this is also us being used to Tom Brady, who's the best at slipping up into the pocket maybe of anyone we've ever seen. But he doesn't have that. And so he gets rattled. He throws off his back foot. He puts too much air under the ball. He makes bad choices. I mean, we've seen it all. We've seen it all. And so if you don't have somebody who he can be confident in his blind side, and yeah, you could bring Trent Brown back for a year. He's another one I think that this would have to be given serious consideration to, because the man is literally a mountain, and it's just sometimes hard to move a mountain. Now, sometimes you can run around that mountain, which is something the Steelers will clearly try to do tomorrow night. But, hey, you got him under contract for another. You got him, I guess, under your control for another year. So, go out and see if you could, find somebody that can, be a swing or a start at right tackle and move a one you over. I mean, you got options here. I'd have to think offensive line has to be, again, somewhere in that upper tier of things to do on that, sticky note list that the Patriots have for the offseason. Mike DeFabo, did I get it right? Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. My apologies. Mike DeFabo from The Athletic, who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers, kind enough to join us here in the Playbook on Wednesday, the eve before Pittsburgh versus New England. Hey, Mike, John Rook here in Foxborough. Thanks for the time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. Listen, it's our privilege. So let's do this. I got a real sense, in kind of reading over not only some of your work this week, but just kind of looking at where the Steelers are and where the Patriots are, and both teams are, not really living up to what they had hoped their advantages would be for this year, more so New England than Pittsburgh, I'd say. But do you see similarities in the struggles that the team you cover is having, similar to what New England is going through? Do those exist in your mind?
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about the history of this rivalry and of this series, you think about Tom Brady against Ben Roethlisberger. And for years, those guys had franchise quarterbacks that were leading these teams. They're both right now in that next era of trying to figure out who is this quarterback. And just as there are questions about Mac Jones and the Patriots where they go at quarterback, there are big questions about Kenny Pickett here in Pittsburgh. He came in with a built-in fan base because he played at Pitt. He had a great preseason this year where he scored 5 touchdown drives and 5 opportunities. It looked like he was going to take that proverbial year 2 leap, and he's been really a disappointment. If you look at the stats, they're basically exactly the same in terms of the record, completion percentage, passing yards. Really all of the metrics point to he's made no growth. And the big challenge for the Steelers, maybe similarly to the Patriots, is how do you separate the quarterback's performance from the play caller? And the Steelers finally moved on from Matt Canada. We saw 1 game of Kenny Pickett showing progress, and then last game he goes down with this ankle injury that's going to keep him out several weeks. So, even though the Steelers have 7 wins, they have more wins than the Patriots, they're much closer in terms of the product they're putting on the field than their record would suggest.
What do you feel like is the main reason behind the 7 wins? Is this Mike Tomlin's coaching job, or is the personnel on this team better than maybe originally advertised?
The biggest reason why the Steelers have the wins they do is T.J. Watt.
Yeah.
If there's a year when there's a defensive player who could win MVP, T.J. Watt should definitely be in that conversation because, you look at some of these games, like, for example, when they played the Cleveland Browns, the defense scored more points than the offense. T.J. Watt had a fumble recovery for touchdown. Alex Highsmith, the other very talented and highly compensated edge rusher, had a pick 6. And that's been their formula. Is they're right now one of the teams that has the most takeaways in the league. They're top 6 in that category right now. So for the Patriots, if they protect the football and they don't play into the Steelers' hands defensively, it's going to be difficult for Pittsburgh to move the football and to score points on its own.
I'm just thinking about it off the top of my head here. I laughed out loud. I LOL'd reading one of your tweets from, I guess it's probably yesterday, I think, on Najee Harris commenting on Mitch Trubisky's leadership. And his quote was, "It's fine, I guess." And then the follow-up was, "How would you describe his style?" "Vocal, I guess." Man, if that isn't just a stamp of approval for a guy like Mitch Trubisky, I don't know what the hell would be.
Yeah, I guess in Najee Harris's defense, I'll defend him for just 1 second. He's a guy that's very fed up with the way things have gone, and he's frustrated. Yeah. And he's also very upset with the media. He's made us his enemy. But when a reporter, basically, it was a TV reporter lobbing a TV-type softball question to him, and instead of entertaining it whatsoever, to shut it down was really a weird comment. And another factor here is Kenny Pickett was the only offensive player that was named a captain this year. He goes down. There's a leadership void there. Last year, the 2 captains were Mitch Trubisky and Najee Harris. Najee Harris should be somebody who could very well speak on this subject. He was the guy going out for the coin toss with Mitch Trubisky, and, whatever mood he was in, he just decided not to entertain it. But, that was a bad look. I don't know what else to say about that.
Yeah. Speaking of Najee Harris, I know he's been one of the Steelers with all the injury problems that they've had. He's been one that's been bagged up. What's his status for tomorrow? Do you know yet?
Yeah, we'll know a lot more once the injury report comes out. He did not practice with a knee injury, so that's significant. But the Steelers do have another good back in Jaylen Warren. And actually the talk in Pittsburgh is, should Jaylen Warren be the feature back? He's a smaller guy who looks like a third-down running back, but he's much more physical than you'd expect. He's an excellent pass protector, even been fined multiple times by the league for hitting guys with his helmet or what they see as an illegal play, but really it's just a football play. So, with a backup quarterback and also the fact that the former running backs coach Eddie Faulkner has been promoted to offensive coordinator, you would definitely think the formula is going to be lean on the run. But I guess that will be a bit in question with Najee Harris' status still up in the air.
Okay. Former Patriot linebacker Landon Roberts, I know, has been on and off the injury list. Any idea what his status might be? Same.
He showed us in the locker room yesterday that he expects that he'll be questionable. And that injury is very significant. The Steelers were rolling with a 3-man rotation that included Cole Holcomb and Quan Alexander. The first 2 guys were lost to the season-ending injuries. And Landon Roberts, as Patriots fans know, is more of a thumper, old-school, traditional downhill run stuffer. He had been already asked to play a bit out of his comfort zone as a 3-down linebacker, forced to play in sub packages and in coverage, and was proving he could be a bit of an Iron Man, playing literally 100% of the snaps plus special teams. So if he can't go, that's a massive void in the middle of the Steelers defense right there, especially for Steelers defense that has been inconsistent for years at stopping the run, dating back to 2021 when they were dead last in both yards allowed per game and yards per carry. It's been up and down. And so if you lose, if you're missing a Landon Roberts, that's your best run stuffer right there. That's going to be a big loss for the Steelers.
Yeah, and you had a great piece, I think, that hit The Athletic this morning about, the inside linebacking core overall that's been devastated really by injuries overall, and the headline was fantastic. An aspiring pilot and a Pokemon card collector filling the void for the Steelers at inside linebacker. That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, so the 2 guys that I alluded to there were Miles Jack,
yep.
who was with the Steelers last year, and he decided he was going to retire. He was done with football, banged up. And because of the fact that the Steelers were so ravaged by injury, they had to call him up and ask him if he wanted to come back and play football again. So he's still working his way back into game shape. I don't know for certain whether he'll be in the fold. The other guy, Blake Martinez, he apparently made a fortune with this Pokemon card collecting scheme, and then that came under scrutiny, and some people accused him of scamming them, and he ultimately returned to football after he lost reportedly $11 million in that whole thing. So that's what the Steelers are down to right now at inside linebacker possibly. And the other guy who's part of that is Michael Walker, who started this season watching the first 2 football games from home. He was on a practice squad. The Steelers claimed him off the Raiders practice squad eventually, and 2 weeks later they had to start him. So things are really not good in terms of the injury situations inside linebacker.
Wow. Amazing story, though, about all those guys, really. And sometimes that's what you get when you have the injuries that you have. One of the keys to success overall in the league, is having depth. And the teams that can somehow have the best quality depth are usually the ones that are left competing at the end of the year. So 7 wins, as you said, not great, but not horrible either, considering especially where the Steelers have been injury-wise, which is why I began the whole comparison with the Patriots. But at the same time, I think there's a little credit that probably needs to go toward Mike Tomlin on this thing to keeping this ship together.
Yeah, definitely. I think that he's doing a good job in terms of managing the pulse of this team. But to be honest with you, here in Pittsburgh, the narrative is different than what it is nationally. Nationally, Mike Tomlin will take a bad season like this and somehow find a way to make it an 8-8 or 9-8 season. But here in Pittsburgh, the Steelers haven't won a playoff game since 2016. And this is a proud fan base that is used to winning Super Bowls. And I'm sure just like the Patriots fan base, just qualifying for the tournament is not a victory. They're not going to throw a parade in Pittsburgh for something like that. So, they see things a bit differently that, why are you spending all this money on defense? Why, and the other factor is just like with Belichick, Mike Tomlin has his fingerprints all over these decisions. He's the one that certainly had a big say in drafting Kenny Pickett, big say in Najee Harris. He's the one that decided to bring back Matt Canada again this year. So how do you give a guy credit for being in a situation that he put himself in is the question a lot of Steelers fans are asking.
Yeah, and that's the question that a lot of Patriots fans are asking about Bill Belichick and some of the decisions he's made. Again, the thought here was to develop Mac Jones and to see if he's the guy, and no on both, really. And I know that's how you guys and how the Steelers fans are probably feeling about Kenny Pickett and even Matt Canada now that he's gone and moved on. There's a lot of similarities here, just that somehow the Steelers have managed to squeeze a few more wins out of it.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is going forward for the Steelers, they're 7-5, and they're still the 5th seed in the AFC right now.
How about that?
And if you look down the stretch, they've got 5 games, and the next 3 are against backup quarterbacks. They've got the Patriots in their turmoil at quarterback. They've got the Colts, who are dealing with their situation with Anthony Richardson gone for the season. And then they've got the Bengals, who are now on a backup quarterback that actually looks pretty good right now. So even though the Steelers look like they're in a tough spot, they've had a couple embarrassing losses, including to the previously 2-win Arizona Cardinals, I still think that this team very much is in the conversation. I don't think that they're any closer to actually competing with the heavyweights than they were when Kenny Pickett got absolutely smoked in his first game in Buffalo, or a couple weeks later when they got destroyed by the Philadelphia Eagles. But I still think they can get into the tournament at least, which is kind of wild when you consider all their limitations on offense.
Right. Okay. Mike, what's one thing in your estimation that really went well this year for Pittsburgh? Because just from the conversation we're having here and my thought process, and you've done a good job of kind of enlightening me in a couple of areas that were kind of gray around about here. But, I mean, just from looking at it, you think this team was 5-7 instead of 7-5 or even worse. What's been one of the things that's been a surprise that really has worked well for them?
Well, you can't really point to anything offensively because it's just been that bad. I can't think of a single.
How about scoring touchdowns, Mike? That would be a huge bonus because we don't know what that's like here.
Yeah, well, really, the only thing that Kenny Pickett did well is he's very good in the fourth quarter when you need one drive. It's almost remarkable that he's transformed into a different quarterback. Now, that's out the window with him injured. The other thing is just the defense as a whole. This was a unit that's very highly compensated. They've for a number of years been if not the top paid, one of the top paid defenses in the league. And so they were going to have to win with this formula. And they have lived up to expectations at this point. They're top 6 in terms of points allowed. And as I mentioned, their turnovers are really impactful. So that's been the bright spot for the Steelers. And I guess that's also the disappointment because they have a championship caliber defense, and they have a historically and comically inept offense, and that's what's holding them back.
Yeah, I kind of gathered that. And then I don't know what happened against the Cardinals last week, but in all honesty, when I saw that result, I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. So how does that failure occur to allow them to have that kind of offensive progress? It had to have set somebody back a good ways on the defensive side of the ball.
I think really the game kind of swung on 2 plays or one big sequence. The Steelers had a 4th and goal from the 1-yard line. Najee Harris was unable to punch it in, and then the Cardinals flipped the field and drove 99 yards for the touchdown.
Amazing.
And that's where things really came undone for the Steelers. And, as much as I'm talking about the strength of this defense, the biggest shortcoming is they give up a ton of yards, and most of those come on big plays. They're one of the worst teams in the league when it comes to limiting big plays. At one point, they gave up the most completions of 20-plus yards. So if I'm the Patriots and I'm Bill Belichick, my formula is going to be trying to come up with ways to scheme up a couple shots. Try to take advantage of a guy like Patrick Peterson, who has name recognition and was a great star of this league for a long time. He's 33 years old right now. He can't run with young defensive backs. He's admitted that himself. Those are his words, not mine. So if I'm the Patriots and I know that you guys are struggling offensively, that would be my formula. Look for opportunities to take deep shots when they're there.
I'd like to look for an opportunity just to complete a forward pass. I mean, I know I'm trying really not to be flip here, but I'm just like, wow, that's just it's gotten to be that bad over the last couple of weeks. So at any rate, it'll be interesting to see what Al Michaels has to say about all of this, I think, on the TNF broadcast. Don't you think?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that this week because Al Michaels is at the stage of his career where he just says whatever he feels and has made it no secret that he thinks the product's poor and that he's miserable calling these awful Thursday night games. And this might be the worst one of the bunch. I think that the over-under right now is at 30.5, which is
crazy,
historically low. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not even sure that they'll get to that. That's how bad both of these offenses are right now.
I'll be stunned if they get to that, to be quite honest with you. But could be an argument and could be a conversation for another day. Mike, thank you so much for spending some time. Really appreciate it. Look forward to continue reading your stuff.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
You got it. Mike DeFabo. And you can get him on Twitter or X, or whatever we want to call it, at Mike DeFabo. DEFABO is where you find him on X. And follow him. He covers everything Steeler nation-wise for The Athletic. and started reading his stuff, I guess maybe earlier this year, and he's become one of the guys that I kind of like to dig into, especially when it comes to things not only about the Steelers, because it's a future opponent. So here's a guy that you want to try to catch up with, but other things within that division as well. So all good stuff. Russell Baxter is about 10, 11 minutes away, but in the meantime, let's get back to the phones. Hello, Patty and Agawam. How we doing today?
Doing great, John. How about yourself?
Hanging in, my brother. Hanging in. What's happening? What's on your mind?
Yeah, me too. Well, I got to deliver a mea culpa because I don't know if you remember, but before the season started, one of my bold predictions, I said Mac Jones was going to finish top 3 in the AFC in passer rating. So that went right out the window,
Yeah, well, okay. I think we gave everybody a mulligan, but, I mean, that would be the equivalent of a golf mulligan, I guess, that you snap hooked out of bounds, right?
Yeah. And trust me, when I'm on the course, I have many mulligans.
Yeah, I understand that part of it. Sure, totally. Look, I would also tell you that the reason that you got a snap hook off of that one was because he just, the offensive line never settled in front of him. He constantly played, with the case of, jittery feet, throwing off his back leg. I mean, we can see it, in almost every week that he's played, that, clearly he doesn't have the confidence that he isn't going to get plastered. And if you don't have that innate sixth sense of knowing when to slide up in the pocket and feel that pressure coming down your backside, that's what's going to happen. And I think that's part of the reason why he's had a lot of the result that he's had this year. He needs to feel comfortable, and that offensive line does not make him feel comfortable, period. So.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I know this is probably an unpopular opinion, but personally, I mean, you look at what they have as far as the tackles go this year, Trent Brown's a free agent. If you look at the free agent list, he's actually the top free agent left tackle in the 2024 class.
Mm-hmm.
And where they're picking, I mean, you're going to have 2 studs up there. I wouldn't mind seeing them draft one of these guys, Fashanu or Joe Alt, and maybe trade back in, try and get one of these good quarterbacks, maybe like a Michael Penix or Jaden Daniels, late in the first, mid to late in the first round, and sign a guy like T. Higgins in the offseason. Because, I mean, if they're going to reconstruct this team via the draft, it's going to take a couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, they got the money to spend this coming year, but it's going to be a couple-year process. And I would just, tell my fellow Patriots fans who've been there for a long time and some of those who aren't used to losing, guys have been watching guys and gals over the last 20 years. We've been, like us older fans, we've been through this before, and it's okay. I mean, the biggest difference between then and now is we do have an ownership group that cares about winning, that can spend the money, that can turn this thing around.
That is a big difference that we really haven't talked a lot about, that, the ownership group is vastly different from what it was the last time the Patriots were going through this kind of struggle.
Yeah, right. I mean, at that point, we didn't know if we were going to have a team here or if they were going to move to St. Louis and become the Stallions.
Right.
So just caution Patriots fans, look, it might take a little while, but just stay positive. The Crafts, they're not dumb. They're great business people. It's just going to take maybe a couple seasons to get through this. If we suck again next year, that could be a positive because we could be picking at the top, towards the top 5 of the draft again next year. And honestly, that's the best way to build up your team. Infuse good young college talent coming out, and you never know, John. We might suck bad enough for a few years where we might get like a Marvin Harrison Jr. and an Arch Manning, in a couple of years.
Now that would be an interesting combo, wouldn't it?
That would be. I would be down for that. That'd be awesome.
I think I'd be down for that too, but you're going to have to probably wait 2 years. So you're probably looking at
at least 2.
You're probably looking at 2026 before you'd see Arch Manning. That's So I mean, because everything that I've heard, from the alma mater that he's pretty happy where he is. He's not looking to transfer out. He likes the environment and the team and everything, and it looks like Quinn Ewers is coming back for next year. At least it would stand to reason that he will come back next year. That was the latest, especially if Texas has any success in the playoff, which means then that unless Arch Manning beats him out next year, he's going to be the second string likely next year. So it'll be 2025 before he moves into the starter role. And you got to figure, like, unless he just has a boffo 1 year, he's going to spend 2 years. 2 years probably as a starting quarterback, which is what he would have, 2 years of eligibility left. So, he'll get a redshirt year for this year because he didn't play in 4 games. I think that's the limit that you can play in. So he's got basically after this year, he's still got 4 years of eligibility left. So next year he's behind Quinn, and then he'd have 3 years after that, and he'll use 2 of those likely. That would be my guess. So, and from everything I've seen, he's got a lot of fluidity. He's got his grandpa Archie's, movement in the backfield. He probably has, Uncle Peyton's arm. So, he looks like he's got a lot of good attributes there. I think he might be worth taking a look at, but you're probably going to have to wait on him for a while. I tell you, the guy that actually intrigues me is obviously Daniels, and I know that he seems to be a favorite for a lot of people, especially since they might be able to get him late first round, early second round, what have you. To me, he's liable to get some strong consideration for the Heisman, and I think so will Penix from Washington. So those are 2 guys that I would watch very closely, I think, during the upcoming bowl games and the playoff games as well from LSU and Washington, respectively, and see what you think, because I think those are the kind of guys that would likely be available for the Patriots to select, because I don't think that they take a quarterback. If they have the 2 pick, I don't think they take a quarterback. How do you like that?
Well, I'll say this about Daniels. Last year when I watched him, I'll compare him to the year before Deshaun Watson, just the player, not the person. But when the year before he came out of Clemson, he kind of looked like a one-read quarterback, and then like his senior year, or I can't remember if it was his junior year when he came out. Yeah. Like Daniels, he looked like he took that next step, and I'm intrigued by him. But 3 really quick things, and I'll let you go because I know you got to get Russell on.
Shoot.
Number 1. Congratulations on Texas being in the college football playoff. I hope they make it to the finals, because I love Sark. Number 2, if I don't get a chance to call in before Christmas, John, you and your family have a Merry Christmas. And number 3, I'll pick the Steelers to win. We'll get on the board, John. 7-3. How's that?
You might be the first 7-3 prediction I've ever heard on the show. That's awesome. All right, Patty. Hopefully we'll get a chance to speak before Christmas, but same to you and yours, my friend.
I hope so. But if not, you guys have a great Christmas, all right?
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
All right.
Patty and Agawam. Yes. How about the Longhorns? How about a little run for the Longhorns, huh? Getting in there. Maestro, do we have any Longhorn band music that we can actually get to? Because I think we do somewhere, right? Yes! Just for you, strippers. Oklahoma beat Texas in the last play of the stinking game this year. And then Texas steamrolls everybody else. Hey, it's not how you win, it's when you win. And if you lose at the end of the year, you're toast. Georgia proved that. You lose early in the year, Alabama proved you got a shot, right? And as far as Florida State's concerned, look, I know that's been a huge topic of conversation across the country in college football this week. My initial reaction to Florida State getting snubbed, going 13-0, winning the ACC, going undefeated, being a conference champion, and still not getting into the Final Four, my initial reaction was one of utmost shock. Couldn't believe it. And while I was jubilant that, my Longhorns made the playoff, I was equally stunned that Florida State did not. But upon further review, and I tried purposely not to have a gut instinct to this one, a gut reaction to this one. I wanted to have this set for a little while and then sort of re-examine it, because I think, when you react in the aftermath of something that can be emotional, listen to these words of wisdom, someone who likes to strike out and get into Twitter fights all the time. But I think this required a little forethought and a little secondary thought as well, because what was the College Football Playoff Committee charged with? They've been charged with putting the 4 best teams in the playoff. Now, we've solved that issue starting next year when they expand the playoff to 12. And yet you know as well as I know, that teams 13 and 14 will still find a way to bitch and moan about being left out next year. That's just an inevitability. But at the very least, there's some wiggle room here now. And so when you have 4 teams in there and you're charged with one task, and that's to get the 4 best playing at the end of the year, that's why Florida State's not in it, because when they lose their quarterback, Jordan, he goes down. It was unfortunate that, he got hurt, knee injury, knocked him out. It's not fair to the other 89 guys on that roster. I get it. It's not. But that's life. You got to figure out a way to pick yourself up and go on. And when the rules have changed to the point where the impetus is to put the best 4 teams on the field, I mean, would you want Florida State to go play and conceivably get beat by 4 touchdowns? No. And college football doesn't want that, because the television networks don't want that, and the teams don't want that because it hurts the sport. So, yeah, that's right. We're going to be selfish, and we're going to put the 4 best teams. We're going to make, probably non-sportsmanlike decisions, all for the sake of the almighty dollar. And the sooner that you realize that college football is like pro football, they're in it to make money, the better off you're going to be. It's that simple. That's just what it's all about. And so, inevitably, I think the College Football Playoff Committee, they got it right. Those are the 4 best teams in the country at the end of the year. You could certainly make an argument for Georgia, but they just chose poorly when it came time to lose in a game. They would have been much better off losing the first week of the year than the last week of the year. That's what I would tell you. We have a definitive recency bias in our sports teams and leagues in this country, and I'm sure probably everywhere, but especially when it comes to football. What have you done for me lately? Not much, I can certainly tell you that.
A real woman could stop you from drinking.
It has to be a real big woman.
It's time to go around the NFL with football guru Russell Baxter.
From now on, your name is Flounder.
On Patriots Playbook.
Flounder.
Russell, what did you think about the decision for the CFP to kind of snub Florida State? What was the right thing? What was the wrong thing to do in your estimation here?
Wait a minute, is this actually you? It's not Eldridge?
I know, right? I know. I was hoping Eldred would call a little bit today, because I know he's a huge FSU fan, and I knew that he would be, using this soapbox to, cry a few tears. But I got to be honest with you, I kind of thought at the end they got it right, even though the decision still stunk.
Well, I'm not the biggest college football maven, but I do know there are, 5 major conferences now?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are 5 that are soon to become 4, because the Pac-12 is no longer going to exist.
Right. But in other words, this year there were 5, and you have 4 playoff spots.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why they did it. And I agree with you, Georgia. It's like Lloyd Bridges in Airplane. Quick the hell of a time to quit sniffing glue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Timing is everything. And in some ways, the injury and timing went against Florida State as well. So it's just bad luck. But as I was listening to you,
mm-hmm.
which obviously you stated it very, very, very well, this occurred to me. Okay, and I know it's totally different. I mean, we can have a little fun here and think about it. Let's say the NFL had to crown its Final Four right now.
Yep.
Regardless of conference.
Right.
Who's the 4 teams in the playoffs?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'll put it to you this way. I'll give that a little thought here, but at the same time, I liken the whole decision keeping Florida State out to, let's say, the Jacksonville Jaguars being booted out of the potential Final Four spot because they're losing,
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence for the year, even though I don't think he's out for the year. But nevertheless, the Jaguars lose him. The Jaguars are a completely different team. And so if you use the college football way of thinking, they're out.
Right. Well, where I was going was because I was going in a different direction, and I was going to make the Kansas City Chiefs the Georgia Bulldogs.
Ooh, and you were going to drop them all the way out, were you?
Well, I mean, I don't know if this occurs to a lot of people because they are 8-4, which, by the way, is one more loss than they had all of last year.
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs are 2-3 in their last 5 games.
Wow. So they have, they've always been trending. Yeah, right.
They lost as many games in their last 5 as they did all last year.
Right.
Okay? So if I was going to pick the 4, it'd probably be Philadelphia, Dallas, San Francisco, and I'd have to flip a coin between Miami and Baltimore.
Sure.
Okay?
Well, I think I'd have to go. I think I'd go 2-2. I think I'd go Niners and Eagles, and then I'd probably go Miami, Baltimore.
Miami, okay.
I think
Dallas,
that's
is very intriguing.
Yeah, they are,
and a lot of points, and some people forget 2 years ago they led the league in scoring.
Yeah,
a lot of that with defensive touchdowns and stuff like that, defensive and special teams touchdowns.
Yeah,
but I mean they've kind of gathered themselves as well, and Detroit their defense has really kind of fallen apart the last 5 or 6 weeks and all that, but it is interesting. And now, does college football go to 8 teams next year?
No, they go to 12.
Is it 12?
Yep. So the top 4 teams will get a bye in the first round.
Right.
So what they'll do is they will take the conference champions in FBS, which would be, there's only going to be 4 champions next year because the Pac-12 is gone. So they'll take the 4 conference champions, and then I think they take the next best 8 or the next best 7. And then that 5th team is going to be one of the group of 5 conferences. Whichever team is the best, I think, has got an automatic spot in the playoff.
So it's not the Pac-12, it's now the Pac-12?
Yeah. Or no, it'd be the unpacked 12.
Unpacked 12.
Hey, I just thought of that. I might have to patent that one.
Hey. Right in the Nitwits column. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, all right. So part of sort of the story of this Thursday night game this week, Russell, has to do with Al Michaels' reaction to it. What do you think he's going to think when, as he's studying this week for the Patriots and the Steelers, and we already know that he has a sort of a disdain for, let's just say, unattractive games on these Thursday nights, but this certainly isn't going to buck that trend, I don't think.
The only thing I can think of he could come out and say right at the top is, would it be a miracle if any one of these teams scored?
Yeah. Right? Yeah, it might be. I mean, I can't believe that we got an over-under of 30, in a modern-day football game of 5 wides and, spread formations and shotgun, and pistol sets. And, oh, my goodness. And you're telling me 30 points for 2 teams in 60 minutes? That's insane.
This held what? 3 straight opponents to 10 or less?
Yeah, and you can't win.
And they can't win.
Yeah.
And so, but I'll tell you what's going to be I think is going to be the theme of the night. Okay? Now, this is one of those stats that you have to clarify, but it's actually very factually accurate. The longest tenured head coach in the league is Andy Reid. Okay? But he is not the longest tenured head coach with the same team. Andy Reid's been a head coach since 1999 in Philadelphia. Remember, he went right from Philadelphia to Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
There was no season in between, John.
Mm-hmm.
The longest tenured head coaches with the same team are Bill Belichick and Mike Tomlin.
Correct.
Now, what are the odds that that's the case for one or both of them in 2024?
Yeah, I know. I think that's legit. Now, I would tell you that even though I know Pittsburgh fans have had their issues, and we talked to Mike DeFabo from The Athletic a little while ago about this, but, even though Steelers fans have their issues with Mike Tomlin overall, and you could certainly question a lot of the decisions that he's made, concerning Kenny Pickett and, the offensive coordinator situation, everything that's going on there, I think he's done a remarkable job to get this team to 7 wins.
Well, one of my stats that's in my key stat piece that'll be out soon and so on is it's very interesting that the Steelers are the only team with a winning record right now that have a negative scoring differential.
Wow.
Now, but I also clarified it, John, because there were teams that were in the playoffs last year that gave up more points than they scored. Okay? Miami was certainly one of them. And probably the biggest example was Minnesota. You know, Minnesota was 13-4 and gave up more points than they scored. You know, Miami was 9-8. So
Minnesota. Wait, when Minnesota was 13-4, they still gave up more points than they scored.
3 more points than they scored.
That I guess that didn't dawn on me, and that's truly remarkable. You could win that many close games, but then lose by that much in routes. That's crazy.
Right. Well, and listen, Dax Football Guru and JR Broadcaster, you can copy both of us on it. There have been 57 Super Bowl champions. Only one finished the regular season giving up more points than it scored. Anybody care to remember? Give me and by the way, give me the team and the season year, not the Super Bowl year, blah blah blah, and all that.
But the season year, right? Because the Super Bowl always is the year after. Yeah. Yeah,
one team that now obviously in the postseason they outscored their opponents because they won every game.
But in the regular season they were outscored.
In the regular season, they were outscored. It's only happened once in 57 Super Bowl champions.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. Should we just wait and let someone respond on X?
Let's wait and see how many people.
Okay.
Let me see if the 2 people who listen to me get this.
Right. Okay. All right. So I will not venture a guess. But yeah, if
Claire, listen, I know. If Claire doesn't even answer, my heart will be broken. So.
Claire answers almost everything.
Yeah.
She's already
Claire
DM'd me twice today. What's that?
Claire answers when I'm not even online.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's the kind of fan she is, right?
Yes.
All right. So if you were a Patriots fan, how would you view these last 5 weeks? You know, knowing that you're in basically in football purgatory because you're not sure really who you want to keep because you might make a change at quarterback, or not only a quarterback but at head coach, and the head coach may come in with a completely different philosophy, and some guys we think are worth keeping may not want to be kept by the new coach or the new staff. So what do you do with these next 5 weeks?
Well, you're going to make sure your players play as hard as they can, okay? And
because they got to be playing for jobs somewhere, right?
That's exactly right. And that, to me, this is more on the players than it is necessarily the coaching staff, because it might not be Bill Belichick evaluating these players next year, okay? But you can't take the free people know who are going to be free agents in 2024. Okay, they know whose contracts are going to be expiring at the very least. So you're looking around and seeing, and you have to listen. That's part of being a professional football player. Okay, is going out there and playing as hard as you can. Now, when you hold people defensively the way the Patriots are doing, you can't tell me their defense isn't playing hard. Of course it is. So offensively, they are challenged. And by the way, they're one of many teams like that this year. We have, in an offensive league, and, we see what Miami does, and we see what Baltimore is capable of. And Kansas City not as capable this year as been in other years. San Francisco can be a juggernaut offensively. More times than not, they've scored 30 points in the games they've won.
Yeah.
But we've also seen teams completely in the opposite direction. The Jets, the Patriots, the Panthers, the Giants. I think we're 12 or 13 games into the season for some teams. Okay, Arizona and Washington played 13. And we still have 4 or 5 teams that haven't scored 200 points this year. So, that's I joked earlier in the year, about the Giants. Are they going to hit the magical 140, which was the lowest point for a 16-game season, which was the 1992 Seattle Seahawks? Okay, now nobody's getting there, but we are in the 17-game season era. And I think it's been a while since any team in the league on 16 games, I'd have to go back and look. I think it might have been a Buccaneers team that finished the year with under 200 points. That's not inconceivable for a couple clubs for that to happen. So that's going to be a new low for somebody to shoot for, and it's probably the wrong term.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to take just a second to look at Pittsburgh as well, because I made the analogy a little while ago that even though the Steelers have a better record than the Patriots, that they've been going through a lot of similar issues. They've had issues at quarterback, issues with the head coach, issues, with the offensive coordinator. Injuries have devastated them, particularly in the Steelers' case, and the linebacking core. I don't know. Do you see any parallels between the two? And is it largely because our perception of two franchises with 6 Super Bowl championships in the Steelers and the Patriots, is it because our perception expects more, and that's why these two teams seem to be equally as down, even though the records say they're not?
Well, I think when you look at the Steelers, you look at the inconsistency of, being blown out by the Niners and being blown out by the Texans, and, think about the last couple of weeks. Pittsburgh is known for its quote-unquote defense, although the defensive numbers are not that great.
Right.
And just in the last couple of weeks, they allowed a rookie quarterback to come down and drive for a late field goal, and they let the Arizona Cardinals, who hadn't won a game on the road all year, drive 99 yards in their own building for a touchdown. So when you think about their defense and their defensive mentality, and listen, they've got some stars on that side of the ball, but they have been devastated, obviously, the inside linebacker, but everybody's got injuries. That's life. So this is a team that has not played many complete football games. In fact, I defy the fact that they played a complete football game, offense, defense, and special teams all year. And there's been a lot of finger pointing, and there have been some positives. I think they've got some promising rookies. I think Broderick Jones on the offensive line has helped make them a better running team, although they didn't take advantage of that last week. The Cardinals were one of the poorer run defenses in the league. You would think Pittsburgh would have done a little more than that. I think what we also have to keep in mind is, because football is so steep in tradition, John, that you have one franchise that basically went 2 decades of doing nothing but winning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 19 consecutive winning seasons, the second longest streak in NFL history. 9 Super Bowl appearances over that span, 6 Super Bowl wins. And the other team has not had a losing season since 2003. And that's not all Mike Tomlin. Bill Cowher gets some credit for that, too.
Yeah, right.
And is the winningest team since the merger. Okay? The Pittsburgh Steelers were something awful from 1933 to 1970, 71, when they went to one playoff game. Imagine that.
Wow.
Being around 40 years and playing in one playoff game. All right? It's crazy as it sounds. The Immaculate Reception was the first ever postseason win in Steelers history.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
That was it. And look what it took to get it.
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday, and I know you do too. But if you look back from a historical perspective, to think that was the first one, that is nuts. That means that was a lot of bad football, during the 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Bad everything. And then they built, I've said this often, that the Patriots own the greatest dynasty in NFL history, because I'm not going to argue with 20 years, which included all those championships.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the team goes, that Steeler team in the 70s, in particular from 72 to 79, was unbelievable.
Yeah, it's dominant as any. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was an era, as you know, in that decade that was owned by 6 teams. The Dolphins, Steelers, and the Raiders in the AFC. The Rams, the Vikings, and the Cowboys in the NFC. The Steelers beat the Rams, the Cowboys, and the Vikings at least once in the Super Bowl that decade. They beat Oakland in 2 AFC championship games. They beat the Dolphins in the 79 playoffs. So they were able to hold their own against the other 5 juggernauts. And they won 2 Super Bowls with the old rules. They won 2 Super Bowls with the changed rules in 1978. So you had a team of the decade, those versus a dynasty of all time. And for a lot of football fans growing up and football fans today, they are the two of the 5 or 6 signature franchises in the history of the league.
Sure, absolutely. Russell, before we lose track of time here, I wanted to jump into a couple of other games that are likely to be better games on the field than the one we may see on Thursday night. Let me at least start with the Jags and the Browns because, depending upon what Trevor Lawrence's status would be, that game certainly has postseason implications on it.
Well, yeah, and the Browns' defense has kind of gone belly up the last couple of weeks. They got pushed around a little by Denver. And the Rams, more of it came later than anything else. They had problems. I mean, what they give up, some bad. I think they gave up safeties the last 2 weeks as well.
Mm-hmm.
They've gone through now 4 quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks. Joe Flacco's the last. The number keeps growing, John. They came back in the league in 1999. Joe Flacco was the 39th different starting quarterback for the team.
That's crazy.
Since they came back into the league.
That's a wild stat. That is wild. 39 quarterbacks in 24 years.
I think the second time they've gone through 4 quarterbacks. In 2008 they had 4 different quarterbacks. So the hits keep on rolling, but they're still 7-5. They're right in the mix. Pittsburgh 7-5. Baltimore's 9-3. And to me, this is a fascinating week because the 2 divisions, which have 3 winning teams, in essence, have some head-to-heads here.
Mm-hmm.
We have Jacksonville Jacksonville and Cleveland, and Cincinnati doesn't have a winning record. They're now 6-6. They play Indianapolis this week,
right?
So we could see some little things sort out a bit. And I know Pittsburgh has Indianapolis the following Saturday. So, no division's been decided yet. I mean, Miami's got a stronghold, don't get me wrong, in the AFC East. They have Tennessee Monday night. Buffalo is at Kansas City, which to me is a coin flip right now because what you see from the Chiefs is, as much as their defense has been better, John.
Right.
The Packers gained more yards and scored more points than any other team against the Chiefs this year on Sunday night.
Yeah, I watched a little of that. I was surprised by that. I didn't realize that the Packers had that much potency in that offense.
They were very balanced. They were very patient. They scored touchdowns on 2 long drives the first 2 times they had the ball. I was a little surprised, too. Listen, the Chiefs made it interesting. At the end, Mahomes threw a very questionable interception. I think he got maybe a little too cute, and it was a great play by the Packers defensive back.
Mm-hmm.
But listen, if you think the AFC is crazy, think about this, John. The NFC only has 4 winning teams, but they have 5 6-6 teams. Yeah,
right. And of course, the 2 of their best teams, probably the best game of the week. With the game Sunday night. Sunday night with the Eagles playing at the Cowboys, and obviously the Cowboys could tie the Eagles for the division lead if they win it, but that doesn't mean the Cowboys won't be a playoff team anyway.
Right. Well, it seems like Philadelphia is involved in the best game every week.
They are. Yeah. Kind of like the Patriots used to be once upon a time.
Yes, they overtime thriller with Buffalo. Last week they were a highlight game, which didn't turn out to be much of a highlight. The Niners very, very impressive and so on. And now Dallas. And listen, they had a great game with Dallas when they played earlier. They hung on for dear life, literally at the end. The ultimate game of inches with the Cowboys, which I'm sure they've gained a little confidence in that. Philadelphia's secondary, very shaky. Dallas getting playmaker after playmaker. Deron Bland, 8 interceptions now, 5 pick sixes. This ought to be fun. This is an important week in the sense that it's the last week of off week. The Cardinals and the Commanders are off, and then we play full board the final 4 weeks of the season, all 16 games. We have 5 rematches this week too, divisional rematches, the 6 divisional games. So, get your tiebreakers set up. I want to say the count right now is 9 sweeps and 7 splits. So take your pick.
Right.
As far as what we're seeing so far. So the product never disappoints. I'll tell you another thing that's interesting, too. We'll go back to the AFC South. Let's say Jacksonville loses and Indy and Houston win. They're all 8-5.
Wow. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking that's what's going to happen this week.
Wow.
That's what I'm kind of thinking what's happened this week, and you'll understand that later when you maybe see another piece from me.
Right.
And
okay.
So
we'll look forward to that. Absolutely. Anarchy rules. I like it.
Well, think about again, and this was something that's in my key stats come. How things turn. Remember how bad the NFC South was a couple of years ago, and then last year 3 of them got in the playoffs, and Washington was 8-1.
Sure.
Well, a year ago, the AFC South won a total of 23 games.
Wow.
This year, with 5 weeks to play, they've won 26.
Wow. Well, you can go from worst to first in a hurry, and I know Patriots fans will certainly hope for that.
Well, I mean, you look around the league again. Cleveland was the last-place team. They're in the mix. Houston was the last-place team. They're in the mix. Denver was the last-place team. They're in the mix. I don't think we're going to talk about Washington.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to talk about the Jets.
Yeah.
Chicago's playing better than they were. Atlanta's in first place. They were last in the NFC South last year.
Right.
And Arizona, well, I can give them credit for it. I will say this to Arizona, that they're a never-say-die team. Jonathan Gannon does have them playing hard at the very least. And that was proven last week in a game where people thought they probably didn't have a chance at all.
Right.
So, it's going to be a dogfight until the end. San Francisco looks overpowering at times. But they did lose 3 in a row in the middle of the year. So, who knows? Who knows? And, and this is not a shot at Kyle Shanahan, but for all of his coaching and 3 appearances in the NFC title game in 4 years, he hasn't closed the deal yet either.
That's right, he hasn't. That's right. Yep. Russell, good stuff as always, my friend. Thank you for keeping me sane with good football talk so we don't have to worry about bad football talk as much.
Well, listen, I think we did a good job of kind of, running a reverse on tomorrow night's game. Okay?
Right.
So,
hey, remember these guys used to be good.
it was. Listen, they played in the AFC Championship game in 2016.
Yep.
Probably one of the most, maybe one of Bill Cowher's biggest wins is when they snapped the Patriots 21 game winning streak when Ben Roethlisberger was and later that year in the AFC Championship game, one of the most perfect passes I've ever seen thrown was Tom Brady's 60-yard touchdown pass to Deion Branch early in that game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that reminded me of the 4th down play that Brady had with Gronkowski in the Denver game.
Yep, that's right.
The AFC Championship game, although they lost that game.
That's right.
I refer to that as like maybe one of the 3 most clutch passes I've ever seen since I've been watching football.
Yeah, those were the days.
Yeah, lots of the good memories still outweigh the bad.
Yeah, but they better hurry up and come back. That's all I know.
Yeah, the only thing better than long-term amnesia is short-term amnesia.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Thank you, my friend. Talk to you next week.
We'll talk to you next week.
You got it. Russell Baxter, the one and only pro football guru at Bax, B-A-X, football guru on X. Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, you go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places. And Bridgestone, the official tire of the New England Patriots, proud to partner with Sullivan Tire, New England's headquarters for quality Bridgestone tires. Visit sullivantire.com to find a location near you. Nelson's in L.A. I'm going to give him the last word in the playbook today. Hey, Nelson, how's it going?
Hey, man, how we doing today?
I'm hanging in. How about you?
Man, just want to say you're doing a great job out over there, man. I enjoy hearing your podcast, man. I enjoy it a lot.
Thank you very much for taking the time to listen. I appreciate you.
I got a question.
Shoot.
Should I let my baby dress as the Steelers or Patriots? Because my girl wants to dress as the Steelers for tomorrow's game.
Well,
go to the curb.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could.
Heads and tails or what?
No, I don't know if I could do that. I mean, look, if you got to keep Mama happy, okay? So if you got to keep Mama happy, then okay, we'll forgive you. And if you need to do that, but here's what I would do. Okay, put them in Steelers jerseys, but put them in Patriots underwear.
Gotcha.
Does that work?
Yeah, it works with me.
Okay. I mean, I'm just trying to.
Right,
I'm just trying to help you out, brother.
Yeah, no, as long as we win tomorrow, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good. I don't want to hear her screaming, we got to win this.
Believe me, I feel your pain. I totally get it.
Yeah, but I enjoy hearing you out, man. You're a good guy, and I wish you the best, man.
Thank you, Nelson. And thanks for taking the time to visit with us on the show. I appreciate it. Believe it or not, of course, as you know, it's officially December, and with the holidays right around the corner, you might be realizing your house needs a holiday spruce. With Bob's Discount Furniture's unbelievable prices and flexible financing on mattresses, furniture, decor, and more, you're sure to impress your guests with comfort and style. Get the ultimate home team advantage with Bob's, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. Our thanks to Mike DeFabo from The Athletic in Pittsburgh, covering the Steelers. Our thanks to the one and only Andy Hart, and, of course, Russell Baxter for joining us here on the program today. Thanks to the Marine, who will certainly be rooting for Navy this week in the Army-Navy game here at Gillette Stadium. Hopefully you get a chance to watch it and tune in and let me know if you can hear me in the background. That's what I would say, right? I'll be there one way or the other. Going to try to enjoy it, but it'll be a long day, boy. Long day. I bet the traffic will even be more monstrous than it normally is. Because we figured out how to manage it with all of the, the people leaving early because the Patriots haven't had the success that they normally have. So we've actually figured out a way to get home in an hour or less almost. And I live down on the south coast of Massachusetts. I have a feeling it's going to be a cluster bleep. Just something tells me. I don't know. Oh, what is this, people? What are people doing here on Route 1? Oh, my goodness. All right. And we'll be back same Pat's time, same Pat's channel next Wednesday. We'll talk about, the Steelers. We'll look ahead as well. And we'll see if we've got any more news to make as far as this football team is concerned for this year as we count down the clock to real change. I think it's on its way, folks. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.